Welcome to Mixed Media Creations with me, Creative Katie, Karen Virchow. Follow me on Instagram, www.instagram.com/CreativeKatie. Share my Instagram address and my YouTube channel with your creative friends. Today we have an index card a day challenge, number 12. It's called As the Sun Colors the Flower. This time, I'm using a technique that I taught in Mixed Media Technique Tag videos 17 and 18, all about collaging. Links to products can be found in the description box below.
So today we are going to do an index card, and we're going to use the technique under the collage category in Mixed Media Technique Tag. And this was number 17 and 18. And I'm going to do collage to make the background like I did in this one. You can see that it's all collaged pieces from my gel prints. And then I am going to use it as well to cut out my focal point, which is what this one is. So I will put a link to those Mixed Media Technique Tag videos. Collage is a wonderful technique to use, and it can be used for anything from creating the background to actually painting the picture to creating the focal point with collage. You can put collage as a base level where you're basically getting texture. The uses of collage are innumerable, and I've only touched on that. So what I have here is an ICAD, and it's a kind of a leftover one. I was experimenting with the crackle, and I found out that this crackle medium, this Demco crackle medium, actually reactivates when I wanted to put a coat of gesso on here just to make it white. I'm going to collage the entire background. So what I'm going to do is I want the background to kind of be blues and greens. So I went through my gel prints and pulled out just a variety of collage papers. And I want some that are on copy paper. I've got some that are on like telephone paper, newsprint. I have some that's on almost tissue paper. I would love to get some, that are on coffee filters. I like using different papers. They all collage down a little bit differently onto the card. So I'm just going to get all set up here, and we'll be back. So I'm just going to mix it up, just mixing colors and textures and patterns underneath. Pretty much what is, the pattern and the colors are going to stay. I'm not going to put paint on top of that. This is going to be the color and the texture in the background. And I'm just going to use matte medium. This is Liquitex matte medium. Often you see me using Liquitex matte gel, but I like the more liquidy for formulation for collage. You can use, you've often seen me use Mod Podge, but also a matte finish. So I'm not worried so much about separating sky and ground here.
So I've sped up the rest of the video because I'm doing a lot of repetitive stuff, and for here I'm trying to mix colors. I'm trying to mix textures, so different kinds of papers, and just kind of putting it in there. Now, when you put a collage background, you're going to get texture because of the ripped papers. But what you're also going to get is this lovely patterning that you cannot duplicate in any other way. And it just makes for a very, very interesting background or part of your page. You can use collage technique to make the focal point with ripped up pieces like a tree or the ocean, using different blues and greens and teals. And as I said, you know, I'm going to put a flower on top of this as a focal point. So I'm not too worried. I want the background to look like blue sky and the greenery around it, but nothing so definitive. And I'm just going. Now, the rest of this, I'll put a link to the video where I show how I store these papers, because I think that's key to being able to utilize them to the best of the ability. So once this is dry, I just clip off the edges and just kind of go around and re-glue down anything that's coming up. I find that you have to be extra careful. And I just realized I'm kind of stuck in this blue-green zone. Now, these are flowers that my friend Yvonne cut with her Cricut, which is similar to the silhouette. And I just want to make a big flower in here. So I'm going for a contrast, and I'm pulling out kind of these pinks and corally pages. And I'm thinking I want to put 3 different size flowers. So I just trace it out from what was cut with the silhouette. And if you don't have a silhouette cut, if you download, clip art, you can cut the outside shape, or you can draw it freehand and make yourself a template. So I'm just kind of layering it and just seeing what color combo strikes my eye, what looks good to me. And quite often I need to cut more and try different things. I'm very visual that way. So I'm just using these gel prints, and here I'm going to cut 2 at the same time. So I'm just kind of holding the 2 together and cutting. Now I traced this with my Stabilo all pencil, which is water soluble. So that white that you see will disappear. And I find sometimes tracing with pencil on the gel prints, it doesn't really show up, depending on what's going on in there. So I'm just kind of putting that level and that one, thinking I like this one at this point in time. But I have options, and whatever I cut out that I don't end up using just simply goes in the stash, and you'll see me use it somewhere down the road. Kind of playing with that, and I'm unsure if I want this to be kind of 3D, if I just want to glue down the centers and then have the rest of it kind of pop up. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, is just gluing down the middles to kind of have those flowers look up, or kind of curve their edges upwards so it won't be flat. So I decide 2 things. That one was too busy, so I went with 2 different gel prints, and I decided that I don't want them 3D. And as I looked through my sentiments, I found the one that says, "As the sun colors the flower, so does art color life." And I love that quote because, art and art journaling and mixed media has really added so much to my life. It just has brought me no end of joy and happiness, the art of creating and the art of sharing it with you. So I'm just kind of trying to play with the placement of the quote and where I want all the elements to go. And I like the idea of just part of the flower showing on here. And I'm again just using my matte medium to glue this all down. And giving this a dry before I move on. I really don't know what I'd do without my heat tool. I find it so extremely useful. This Ranger heat tool, what you need to know about it is does not work well for embossing. So if that's something you would like to do, you'd be better off getting an embossing tool. But the Ranger heat tool, A, is not as hot as an embossing tool. It is also quieter, I find. So I want this flower to stand out a little bit more than it is. So I'm grabbing my pomegranate, excuse me, Dilutions paint, and I'm using the floating acrylic technique, and just shading it to bring some depth into it. Excuse me. And I'll do one side of each petal, and then I dry in between because I don't want to disturb it while it's wet. And then I go back and do the other side. And hopefully you can see how this is adding some dimension. You can shade, you can highlight with lighter colors and darker colors and do a mixture. And that's what you're going to see me doing here. When I do my shading and highlighting, I typically use my angle brush for the float technique. I just find it's a little easier to maneuver than a flat brush, but I've done it with a flat brush as well, so don't think you have to buy. So I keep playing with this, and I've got this orientation, you know, going upright, right? Vertical. I keep playing with it. And something doesn't quite seem right for me. So that's why I'm kind of fussing, because it looks okay, but something's off. And a lot of times when I work on composition, because I haven't studied art or done anything, it's kind of, I go by my instinct. I look and I see, and you know, I make a judgment that way. So when in doubt, edge your project. And here I'm using the archival ink and a makeup sponge, and I'm just going around with, I believe this is black. There will be there's black lettering on on the sentiment. So I grab my fine liner bottle and I decide to add the center of this flower, just to give it a little bit something else. And I'm edging with my fine liner. I love this fine liner bottle. It works so much better for me than micron pens, but you could do this to get the same effect with a micron pen. And then I decide that I'm going to also shade with some gold, just to add just a shimmer, as if the sun is touching this flower, as the quote says. And I'm just adding a little bit on typically one side of the petals. It's a very subtle addition, but it does add. Now, as I use this and I'm doing it, I realize, oh, I kind of like the ICAD going this way. What would happen if I put my quote? And suddenly it all seemed to work and fall together. And interestingly enough, quite often when I'm doing canvases, and I always think that, oh, the orientation is going to go this way. When it comes to finishing, I end up somehow switching it. So, you know, feel free to do that. I'm gluing that down with the matte medium that you saw me use earlier. And I'm splattering it with gold. I had a little extra from before when I shaded. So I'm just splattering with gold. Just brings the whole page together. So, quick and easy ICAD, starting with collage papers or gel prints. I hope you give this a try. Thanks for watching. Give me a thumbs up.